so there is something to do with your brother. What if your brother Splinter actually offends you, causes some sort of real problem? Everybody knows Matthew 18's protocol. Everybody's read it, but nobody ever does it. I think one day somebody's going to do Matthew 18. I'm going to faint out of shock. They don't do this. Matthew 18, beginning verse 15, it says, "And if your brother sins against you, go and reprove him between you and him alone. If he hears you, you will have gained your brother." Now let's be clear what this says. It says, if your brother did what? Sinned against who? You. It doesn't mean if your brother is doing something Torah-wise wrong or breaking some commandment that actually is sinning against the Father. It says if your brother has done something against you. This is not licensed that if you see your brother going to a restaurant on Shabbat or doing some other thing on a holy day or whatever they're doing that you think is a sin, that you now have license to go to your brother. You only have license to go to your brother about that stuff if your relationship with your brother, we've talked about this before, is such that you have an agreement that you can do that. If you have a loving relationship where you trust each other, you respect each other enough to say, I am ready to receive. If you see me doing something, you coming to tell me what you see. Unless you have that relationship, you can't do that. Because it will not be received. Because you have to have a relationship to be able to receive that. But here it says, if your brother sins against you, there's a protocol. You go to your brother, not go to everybody else and talk about it and whine about it, and then go to your brother. First step is go to your brother. And say, and by the way, when you go to your brother, don't assume he knows he did anything that offended you or hurt you or whatever it was. So go there very gently, and don't say things like, well, is there a particular reason why you treated me that way? But say, you may not be aware of it, but what you just did really hurt my feelings or did this or did that or caused me some harm in some way, and I just want to talk to you about it because you may not even realize you did that. Okay? Go approach it that way. But look what it says, if he hears you. So the rest of the protocol is about being heard. It's not about them doing what you want, it's about being heard. He says, if he hears you, what's the idea of hearing? Shema. So hearing, in other words, if they heard you and then do something in reaction to what they heard, then you will have gained your brother. You will have gained your brother. But he says, look, but if he does not hear you, if he doesn't hear you, do what? Take two of your best buddies with you and go beat on him. Well, because that's what you guys do. You go find two people or more, two or three, that agree with you and are on your side to go argue and convince the other person why you're right. Haven't we seen that? That's not what it says here. It says, you go and take with you one or two or more. Okay, it says here, but if he doesn't hear, take with you one or two more, that by the mouth of two or three, what? Witnesses, every word that you said might be established that you actually said it to your brother. See, if I'm having a problem with Manny, I'll just pick somebody to have a conversation. If I'm having a problem with him and I go to him privately, there's no witness that we actually had a conversation. Hey, but if it fixes it, we don't need anything else. But now, if it didn't fix it, I may want to now bring witnesses so that in case it ever blows up in some way, there's at least our witnesses that I actually did go to my brother, so that it's now known and established that I did this. So those witnesses need to be not your best friends, not who are on your side, but people whose reputation others will see as being with integrity and neutral. So that they're not there to take sides, but that they're there to establish what actually happened. If they're obviously your best buddies, people are going to think of them as biased anyway. They don't do you any favors. It's not helping your argument. But if you take two or three or one or two, whatever, neutral people of good reputation and say, look, I just need you to witness that I went to my brother and what I said and the reaction that my brother had when I said it. And so you say, look, I brought these two here because I want to just make sure that there's witnesses that I did come to you and the way I came to you and where my heart was at, trying to want to restore things. Okay? Now, then it says, and if he refuses to hear them, say it to the assembly, and if he refuses even to hear the assembly, then let it be to you like a Gentile and a tax collector. So he says, look, if the person is not willing to reconcile, this is what it's talking about. It's not saying proving that you were right and they were wrong, but willing to have the situation come to a place of reconciliation. Because you could be the one that's wrong. And it may be that when the witnesses in the assembly and leadership gets involved, that they may say to you, but by the way, whatever you did first, by the way, that's a huge part of this. Husbands and wives have this problem all the time. Somehow time freezes for people. So if you and I are having a situation and at some point you do something that upsets me, time starts from that point forward. I will not remember that I did something first to you or something else happened before that. This is the problem with people. Time sort of freezes, and then you have to ask, or the person will quickly say, oh yes, I did do that to you, but what about what you did right before that? What are you talking about? You mean that thing you did first? Well, I don't remember that. Time tends to freeze. Let's be aware that that can happen to you. It can blind you because you get upset, you get hurt, you get emotionally charged and invested in what's going on, and it will blind you to the fact that maybe you actually did something first. And then we get into the ministerial problem of chicken and the egg. And now we got to figure out which came first. It's really a tough challenge because people are not remembering things correctly. It's incomplete. And so our emotions can blind us. So look at the protocol, and let's be careful with that protocol because this is really important, that we understand that this is brought up when someone does something to you, not something that you saw them do that had nothing to do with you, but to you. And now you have a responsibility to go to your brother and try to the idea is to try to make it right, not to try to get them to do anything, but for you to go. And by the way, in hearing you, they need to hear that you're not mad at them, that you forgive them, that you're looking for reconciliation, that you love them. See, they got to hear all of that. You're not going there to get in their face and say, hey, I got a problem with you. There's a different way to handle it.